Howdy, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to the first ever UFOlogy tier list. Or at least to my knowledge, it is the first one ever. I think this is going to be a really fun video. This idea was kind of inspired by a comment that came from a different video by a user named NJ Legend, so thank you for the idea. And with that, let's just get right into it. What I'm going to be doing is ranking these public ufologists and researchers from top to bottom, so left to right. It's pretty much randomized, left to right, top to bottom. I'm going to be putting them all into one of 6 different categories. I came up with all of these myself. I got most of these I knew off the top of my head, but I went through a few lists, like the UFO Wiki on Reddit, and a few other places to make sure I was kind of including everyone that I thought should be in here. But I'm going to be putting them into one of the following categories. Fully legitimate. I would consider this to be the best category. This is the S tier, if you will. What fully legitimate means, it's basically what it sounds like. People that end up in this tier are, probably researchers for the most part, but they're people who have demonstrated integrity and credibility, and in my mind, their presence in the topic of ufology or in the subject is a good thing for ourselves. It's a good thing for the conversation to move forward. And in general, these are the real homies. We're glad to have them around. Next category, this is like the A tier, if you will. Whoops. Honest intentions. So what I mean by this is these are people that are credible, well-natured, that have good, honest intentions about their work and their research, but that may have occasionally been unintentionally kind of led astray, either because they got a bit far off the beaten path and went down into the woo a little bit, or maybe they were kind of intentionally misled or grifted by somebody, including people that might be on this very list. So this is A tier, good people, good researchers, good intentions, but just have not been flawless. We'll put it that way. Moving along, we've got the bit suspect tier, people who are a little sus, as the kids say these days. This category also pretty straightforward. So these are people that have, throughout their career, provided some provably good stuff. Either some research or they've been moving the conversation forward in a way that's beneficial, but that have either maybe gotten a bit too greedy with the money thing, or maybe it's just unclear what their actual motive is if it's not money. But yeah, people that are just a bit sus. Can't fully trust them. No, sir. No, sir, I don't like it. Next category, I don't know if I'd call this C tier, but it's its own thing. I'm calling it too woo, but dude, I respect the hustle. And this is a real thing. What this category are people that are just, it's not that they're dishonest or that they're scammy, but they're too fucking out there. The stuff that they're talking about, probably nowadays, because a lot of them that are in this category, if I'm thinking right, they used to be very legit or very UFO specific, but now they've gone off into the whole secret space program or energy in crystals or whatever the fuck it might be. But again, not necessarily in a bad way. Like, I respect the hustle. Nice. Make that money. But for me, it's just a bit too out there. I'm not going to say crazy, because who knows what's real and not real these days, but too woo. I think everyone here should know what woo is, and if you don't, what are you doing on my video? Next category, straight up grifters. Pretty self-explanatory, but these are people that are just absolute scam artists that are out there. They're only in it for money. If there was any legitimacy to them or their story, it's long since gone, and they're just ripping people off left and right in any one of several different ways. We'll get into that. Then, of course, there's also the Steven Greer tier. I'll let everybody figure out what I mean by that, but he gets his own category. I love everybody. I'm a nice guy. Joke's a joke, So with that, let's get started. If you don't know who any of these people are, I'll be doing a brief explanation of who they are as I rank them. Starting with Mr. Corey Good. So Corey Good is a guy who claims that he was time traveled. He called it, I think, 20 and back. He was time traveled into some sort of secret space program where you don't age. I don't remember exactly how it works. I almost feel like I need a different category for these people, but it's too late for that. I was considering having a category called Cool Story Bro, where it's just like, people that don't add anything to the conversation, but they just repeat greatest hits over and over and over again. Maybe he'd be in that category, but uh, too woo. I don't think he's a straight up grifter because everything I've seen by him, like it sounds like he really believes it, which is a whole different conversation. But I might change my mind on this one. But sorry, dude, too woo. Who do we have here? Is that Mr. Dan Sherman, I believe? Let me double check. Dan Sherman. Yeah, okay. So, this is a guy who claims that when he joins, I forget what part of the army or military he was in, but when he enlisted, he was put into a special program where he learned how to communicate with aliens through his mind using something other than language. And he claimed that he got driven into a secret bunker after his real daytime work or whatever. So it's one of these stories where there's no way to verify it. You can verify that I was there in the military, but a special thing happened off hours in a bunker in the desert. I think it's just a made up story. It's an interesting one. I read his book in a single day, I think. But yeah, he basically claims that he's genetically engineered to be able to communicate with aliens on a special wavelength. I think they call it empaths or something. It sounded very Philip K. Dickensian. So he suffers. That should have been a category, the Philip J. Dickensian aspect. Or Dickensian. What's the thing I'm thinking of? Whatever. It's too sophisticated for this. Jaime, the Mexican journalist who does a lot of tabloid style UFO stuff. I definitely don't consider him a straight up grifter. He's kind of sensationalist and he makes no claim otherwise. So in my mind, that sort of keeps you out of the grifting tier if you're very self-aware of what you're doing and you do it with a wink and a nod. He's not even really woo. He was involved with that whole fiasco where they made a big presentation about an alien body that turned out just to be a dead, mummified, deformed child. And they made a big presentation down in Mexico. I think he was in Mexico with it was an absolute shit show. There's a very good video about that I'll find a link for and put in the description. But yeah, a bit suspect. But again, he's kind of fun suspect. He's not too woo because he's talking about aliens. He's not grifting, so he's a bit sus. Mr. David Wilcock. Easily, boom, goes right in there. He's another alternative history type. I don't know if I consider him a major ufologist. Maybe not anymore. To be honest, I'm probably least familiar with his work out of everyone here, so if I'm miscategorizing him, I apologize. But I think, if I remember right, he kind of went off the deep end with some really sensational, I think, secret space program type stuff, which we'll get into a bit more on other people, but too woo. Respect it, though. Make that money. Mr. Donald Kehoe. Honest Intentions. If you don't know who Donald Kehoe was, he wrote the book Flying Saucers Are Real. He was an Air Force person, if I remember right. Military for sure. I think he was Air Force. He was one of the first military people to come out and publicly make a big fuss about aliens and UFOs and say that it's all real, that there's a cover-up, and that's really all there is to his story that I know about, though. I mean, it was a pretty big deal at the time. I don't think I've ever seen anything in modern times that sort of implies that he was grifting or hoaxing or any of that. He seemed to sincerely believe it, and I think his breakthrough was very important for the conversation nationally. So, Mr. Kehoe, rest in peace. I commend you for your service, and thank you for making the book Flying Saucers Are Real. Giorgio Damski. Straight up grifter. If you don't know who Damski was, he was the founder of, I believe, if not the founder of, one of the most vocal people in what's called the contactee movement. So sort of the first group of people who talked about meeting with aliens, some of them on an ongoing or repeat basis, and a lot of people talking about what their message was and meeting the Venusians, and it's all a bunch of made-up crap, sadly. I think there are people that legitimately feel that they've been abducted by aliens, and I don't know what to make of it, but the contactee thing was very much, I don't know what you'd call it. It's similar to like, it's Scientology if they were honest about their source material and what you find out at the end, if that makes sense. Please don't sue me. Mr. Christopher Mellon. Boom. As far as I know, he is fully legitimate. This is a dude from a super wealthy family with all the credentials in the world, all the government experience in the world, who absolutely has nothing to gain from being involved with UFOs or aliens or whatever you want to call it, disclosure. He's been in many positions of privilege where he would have had access to information that would probably blow our plebeian minds. And so far, he hasn't done anything that's even remotely suspect. He seems to be very honest in his assessment and his interest in the topic. And again, he's got all the credentials that are very provable to back it up. So he becomes our first person in the fully legit category. I tip my cap to you, good sir. But J. Allen Heineck, also fully legit. So for context, he was I think the original scientific consultant for Project Blue Book, or the sort of the military's official program looking into UFOs and or reports of UFOs. He, if memory serves me correctly, his initial assessment was that it was all a bunch of bullshit, and he set out to prove that, and the military was also encouraging him to explain it all away in case he arrived at some other conclusion. He was sort of instructed to make sure that all the explanations were mundane, and he did that at first, later admitted that he regretted that, and came to the conclusion himself that there is absolutely something very real going on with this whole subject. And that also mirrors my own thoughts. I don't necessarily get into them all the time, but I think there's just too much out there for there to be nothing to it. But what it is, very hard to say. Enough for that for now. But J. Allen Hynek, definitely an important person in the overall arc of ufology, and again, very credentialed, very professional, never did anything that I thought came across as dishonest or lacking integrity, except for maybe his initial willingness to sort of comply with the request to explain away UFOs. But because he turned it around and became such an important milestone for the subject, I think that's something we can look past. So, Mr. Heineck, fully legit. Jacques Vallée, or Vallée, I think it's Vallée. Ooh, this is tough. Ooh. I don't mean any disrespect if I do this, because I consider him to be one of the most important figures in modern ufology. So, Jacques, I can't pronounce his name very well. I'm really bad with French. So, Vallée, he was a researcher he's written many, many books over many, many years, and he's explored a lot of the more, to some people they might sound woo, but I would consider them more fringe aspects of the phenomenon, and he asks some of the more difficult questions to wrap your head around. He gets into a lot of like the spiritual and psychological aspect of this. I believe in some ways also sort of the religious and spiritual nature of it as well, and but he approaches it from a very rational mindset. He's trying to just make sense of the mass amount of data out there that sort of indicates that the answer, the solution to what all of this might be is possibly much more complicated than we think, and it's not as simple as what they call nuts and bolts. I mean, as crazy as this might sound to some people, aliens and spaceships visiting Earth might be like the simple solution, and the more complicated ones that are theorized about makes it look like child's play in comparison. So yeah, Jacques Vallée, honest intentions. If there was like an in-between, he would be in it for sure. I think he's been a bit misled by some like the Skinwalker Ranch type stuff lately, where there's a hint of scumminess with some of the people that he surrounds himself with, or that he's been involved. Maybe not scumminess, that's a bad word, but there's a hint of dishonest intention focused around money with some of the people that he's associated with recently, and it's unfortunate because I think as a whole his body of work is just excellent. Uh, Billy Meyer, I believe. Straight up grifter. That's an easy one. Uh, Billy Meyer was a guy who, I forget where he's from, but he claimed to be receiving visits from aliens on a constant basis. Took a lot of pictures that were clearly staged and hoaxed, and he was more or less just delusional. But he wrote many, many books. They were very common and popular in the 70s and 80s. And even after it was fully proven that he was completely hoaxing it, I still think he didn't walk it back, if memory serves me right. So in my mind, like, what else can we call that? I don't respect his hustle because it's so transparent. Sorry, Mr. Meyer. Straight up grifter. Ooh, George Knapp. Or George Knapp, depending on who you ask. A little sus. If there was a category that was like in between here and here, no, that's too harsh. So my big beef with Knapp. So who he is? He's a journalist from Nevada or Las Vegas. I think supposedly he inadvertently became like associated with the UFO topic, but he's since embraced it with both arms. He's done a lot of very good, interesting stuff that borders on being totally legit, but unfortunately he is connected to my good friend Big Bad Bobby Lazar, and that just kills any credibility you have. I'm sorry, dude. If you want to be seen as I guess you don't care what I think if he's watching this. Dude, it's 2021. Give up the ghost, my friend. If that is that even the right phrase? Whatever. A little bit sus, George Knapp. Ancient Aliens guy, Giorgio. I fucking find this guy hilarious. I went and saw him speak once. I think he's the only ufologist I've gone to see speak. Watched him do a presentation in like the convention room at a very basic hotel, like a Motel 6 type thing, or it sat maybe 100 people. It was exactly what you'd expect it would be. It was hilarious. This dude, he does it all with like a wink and a nod. He's on Ancient Aliens, the TV show. He's the dude that, in case you don't know, I can't believe I have to make this joke, but he's like, well, look, I'm not saying that the reason there's perfectly flat 100-ton stone structures underground in Egypt is because aliens came down with laser cutters and lifted it with anti-gravity, but it was aliens. He's that guy. It's not even too moving. I mean, I respect, whatever. Love the dude. Can't hate on this guy. Graham Hancock gets to go right next to Mr. Giorgio. Graham Hancock is an alternative history researcher who's got a lot of interesting theories. A lot of it's very, very woo. A lot of it's very unprovable at the moment. I think he's got a lot of stuff that may, in due time, prove out to be true. But a lot of the stuff he does is also just way, way, way too woo. But man, I respect this dude's hustle. He constantly talks about when he's on like Joe Rogan or whatever. He's like, yeah, I was out in the jungle doing DMT with the natives and this and that. And I just keep thinking, like, who's paying for that? How does this dude afford to like go do psychedelics in the jungle all the time and make like an academic career out of it? I don't know. If I did, I wouldn't be making this video. I would be doing that. But man, Graham Hancock, woo, I respect it. Oh, who is that again? That's is that Class? That's John Mack. Ooh, John Mack. Very, very interesting dude. John Mack was one of the first people to study alien abductions from like a very serious and scientific and professional viewpoint. Excuse me. So he kind of put together the first coherent bodies of work as a psychologist on alien abductions and some of the reoccurring themes that people talked about that he found very interesting, because he would routinely notice that people who didn't know each other, that had no connection or cultural similarities in any way, their abduction experiences would be almost identical to people from completely different scenarios. And so he dedicated his life to studying that, along with some other things. I believe he also looked into like the afterlife and some stuff. But again, legitimate researcher, very, very interesting guy, and I don't know of anything that he ever did that even is potentially not completely legit. Unfortunately, though, Neil deGrasse Tyson. when it comes to ufology, he's a bit sus. He's obviously a famous, everyone knows who this guy is, famous scientist on TV. He's got the credentials, he's got the money, he's got the influence, he's got the fame. What I find suspect about him is like this dude is just completely unwilling to entertain the idea that there's anything potentially legitimate to this subject. And he often makes fun of people in a very like childish way who do believe that there's something to it, including like military and government officials who have basically said, "Look, I've seen this shit. I can't show it in public because whatever, it's classified, but like I've seen that there's something to it," and he still acts like a big fucking baby about it. And I find that suspect, almost to the point of, is he like paid to be? I mean, I guess we'll do the whole like CIA shill thing. Like, is he paid to be such a douche about it? But yeah, Neil deGrasse Tyson, a bit suspect. John Greenwald Jr., fully legit. If you don't know who this guy is, he runs the Black Vault, which is the largest public database of declassified and FOIA requested CIA and similar PDF docs. Dude's he's got integrity, he's incredibly honest, very approachable. If you see him on Reddit and you comment, he actually takes the time to reply to, I think, almost everyone that replies to him. And he does very, like, I would call pure research into the subject. Even to the point of being a Debbie Downer a lot of the times, because some people will find some pretty hype-looking documents that imply some really cool stuff is afoot, and he's always the one that has to be like, look, I know what it sounds like they're saying here, but it's not actually what you think it is. Like, he recently did that with the whole, there was, the implication was that, like, parts from Roswell were being studied somewhere, and then it turned out that, nope, it's not what it sounds like. But JG Jr., fully legit. I salute you, and keep doing the Lord's work, my friend. Totally legit. Linda Moulton Howe. Struggling between these two. I'm not sure if she's now so far woo that I can't consider her a positive influence on the subject, but I respect that. You know what? Maybe this is a hot take. LMH did a lot of very groundbreaking research, especially early on into like cattle mutilations and some of the other topics that are not so much nuts and bolts UFO stuff, but on the periphery of it. And I think that I don't think she's dishonest or lacking integrity in any way. I do think that she got the Richard Doty treatment from literally Richard Doty. Oh, why is he not on this tier list? I'll have to add him. She got the Richard Doty treatment, which was like she was purposefully misled by people whose intentions were not good. And I do think that that has led her to be involved with some sort of woo and questionable topics in recent years, but I don't think that that's the result of grifting or being dishonest or not having integrity. I think that's just, it's the nature of being on like the UFO circuit and wanting to always have those scoops. So Linda Moulton Howe, people might disagree, but I think honest intentions. Richard Doty, I wish I had thought of him. If I had, Doty would be, oh dude, I don't even know. He might even get his own category. I don't know what Doty is. Somewhere in between those two. Mick West. You know what's funny about Mick West is when I was Googling for a picture to put in the tier list maker, like every picture is of him looking at you in this exact same way where it's like, you can tell this is just a dude who doesn't believe anything from anyone. Like, I don't know how to describe it, but if you like, look at this shit. This is hilarious to me. Like, boom, 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 boom. Like, you're full of shit. You're full of shit. It's a bird. It's a bird. Mick West. I find anyone who's a diehard skeptic like this a bit sus, because it's like, yeah, you might not believe that there's aliens or UFOs. That's fine. There's no objective proof of that. But to be as like fervent or religiously dedicated to disproving it all as you claim the other side is, and proving it all, is a bit pot calling kettle black, and then it becomes suspicious when you're supposedly the rational side of this argument and like you're the ones that are thinking clearly, yet You cannot accept anything as either unknown, ambiguous, or maybe to be what it looks like. It has to be something mundane. I find that a bit sus. So Mick West, you're a bit suspect, my dude. Don't know much about you other than smile once every while, dude. It's good for you. Ross Coulthart. This is a new dude on the scene. He's a legendary Australian journalist who is kind of like I don't know who the like, an American analogy would. I heard Dan Rather thrown around, but I don't know enough about Rather to make that conclusion myself. But he's like Australia's A tier or S tier journalist who's got decades of awesome scoops, demonstrated integrity, and does like an amazing job at sourcing his stories and making sure that everything he presents is credible. If you haven't read his book, In Plain Sight, it just came out this year, and it's, in my opinion, In Plain Sight is currently it's the best book overall on the subject if you're either getting into it for the first time or if you want to have sort of a refresher about what's gone down in the last 10 years, which has been a lot. He covers it all very, very thoroughly and coherently, unlike me in that sentence. And what's funny to me is he's so baffled by some of his own conclusions that a lot of the summaries of his own conclusions contain stuff like, I can't believe I'm writing this down because of how ridiculous it sounds and how crazy it would have seemed to me even a year ago. But like, here's what the sources have told me that I can verify. Here's what appears to be true if everything checks out the way it appears to. And I find that to be pretty commendable when you have the self-awareness enough to sort of know that what you're saying is going to be so off-putting to some people that you need to kind of quantify it like that. So, Ross Coulthart, fully legit. Back when I was going to have a category or a tier called Cool Story Bro, I was going to put Nick Pope in it. And Cool Story Bro was going to be a tier for people who have like good intentions and they're not like sketchy or grifting, but who they basically just retell UFO's greatest hits over and over again. So they've got either they were involved with something, like again, he worked at the Ministry of Defense in the UK at their supposed UFO desk like 20 years ago or 25 years ago. So he saw a lot of stuff, and he's been involved with kind of like the UFO circuit ever since then, but he doesn't really bring much that's new to the table that I've seen. So, Cool Story Bro was going to be for Nick and people like him. But, I mean, seems like a nice dude. I don't know too much about him that I find suspect. He's in like every UFO show and he's collecting some speaking fees, I'll put it that way, but not in a way that I find suspicious or grifty. Like, dude makes money talking about UFOs. Why would you not? If you could. Papa Lou Elizondo, obviously. Now, here's a hot take, though. Recently, there's a small part of me that has some questions about Elizondo, but for now, I'm putting him in the fully legit category. So if you don't know who Lou Elizondo is, he worked for the Pentagon or the Department of Defense, running what was effectively like the elite UFO UAP phenomenon-related division called ATIP, and if we take him at his word, which I do, he comes across as very honest and very credible in his interviews. If we believe him and take him at his word, he quit because he started to realize that these things are real and that they present a threat to the military that needs to be taken seriously. Not necessarily like an overt invasion type threat, but like it's just dangerous. There's near collisions. They're in the airspace. They're toying around with nuclear weapons. And he resigned because he felt like the people were not taking it seriously enough within the government. So he's been since then he's kind of been on the podcast UFO circuit, but apparently not charging speaking fees, and seems to just want to get the story out there and prepare us for disclosure, which he seems to claim is happening as we speak. I think in due time we'll know exactly what his deal was. But I can't not mention that he did work in counterintelligence for 20 years. So there are people that suspect, or their theory is that maybe all of the recent disclosure stuff is all a big psyop, or it's like it's a trick to get better military funding, or it's painting a new threat narrative. Personally, I don't believe that, at least not yet. So, as far as I know, Elizondo, fully legit. I think he's done a lot for the subject. Getting close to being done. What do we got next? Philip Corso. A bit sus, in my opinion. Philip J. Corso was a military, a general maybe? Lieutenant Sergeant. He was a higher up in the military, and he claimed in a book that was written towards the end of his life, not by him, but by someone else based on his story, he claimed that Roswell was real. I think he reinserted Roswell back into or he created it as a mainstream topic. He claimed that it was real, that there was extraterrestrial technology recovered, and that his job in the government was to take a lot of the bits and pieces of it that had been recovered and seed it out into the private sector or other industries where it could be studied without some of the people studying it really knowing where it came from. Like fiber optic is one claim that he made, night vision. So his book basically, it's called The Day After Roswell. It talks about the whole story, where all the stuff went, and what they found from it. It's an interesting read. It was very important because it did create focus on the Roswell incident, which is now like a house. Everyone knows what Roswell is. It does seem a bit far-fetched, and a lot of it is not provable, and there have been people that claim that they know that his story is either partly or mostly bullshit. I don't know the truth. Based on everything out there, I find him a bit sus, but overall, it's better that he emerged and wrote his book than it is if he did not. Or we're in a better place because of it. Who do we got here? This is Mr. Class, I believe. He's another diehard skeptic who's basically, he runs like the Skeptic Inquirer or the Skeptic. He runs a magazine for skeptics, and his sole purpose in life is to basically debunk everything. And just like Mick West and Neil deGrasse Tyson, I find that in itself to be a bit suspect. Like, why not just have like the rational inquirer where you're not setting out to prove that things are bullshit, you're setting out to look at interesting things and figure out whether they're true or not. It's the approach that I find weird, and it's the dedication to like never believe in any of it, no matter how much evidence these people up here tend to bring to you. That's weird. Mr. Class, you're a bit suspect, my man. Richard Dolan. Yeah. You know what? No. Wait, yeah. So Richard Dolan's a longtime UFO researcher. He's done a lot of good research, a lot of good. I think he's written some books that were good. Overall, his contribution's been very healthy for the topic, and he's covered a lot of important topics. I would say in the last 10 years or so, he's definitely gone down the path of being a bit too woo. He's another secret space program guy. I think maybe like Antarctic Nazi flying saucers as well. I forget if that's him. He very much believes the Eric Davis papers, which are like supposedly notes from a meeting between two people that discuss a lot of things that would be sensational if true. Most people think that they're not real, including John Greenwald, but he very much does. And he's not grifty, though. That's why I'm putting him here. Like, he's into some weird shit, but he's contributed a bit here and there, and I respect his hustle, because, again, I don't think he's being deceitful about how far out some of his ideas are. So, because of that, Richard Dolan, too woo, but I respect the hustle. God damn it, you already know what I think of this guy. Bob Lazar, complete fraud, straight up liar. Education is fake. Didn't work at S4. There's no sport model, or if there is, Bob's never seen it. I've got a whole video debunking Lazar. It does the UFO community a great disservice allowing this man to remain in the limelight as he does, because when newcomers to the subject look into it, and they see Lazar and Jeremy, I forgot Corbell too, but he would be in this category as well. It's so laughable that a lot of them, they walk in the doors. It's like that Simpsons meme with Grandpa Simpson walking into the brothel that Bart works at. They walk in, they see Lazar, they turn around and walk out, and they never think about the subject again. Straight up grifter, Bob Lazar. Stanton Friedman, rest in peace. He recently passed away. This dude was legit. He was a nuclear physicist. He was one of the first people to blow up Bob Lazar's story. and do it in a way that was very much documented and thorough. Friedman did a lot of excellent work, a lot of very complete investigations throughout his entire life. I can go on for days about him, but I will not. Some people, because Friedman believes the MJ-12 documents have some validity to them, other members of the community have pointed out that that might make him, how does he not know they're fake? That's a whole topic for a different day. I do think that the MJ-12 documents have a lot more going on than people give him credit for. He was obviously legit incredible in every other aspect of his life, and I think we should extend him that courtesy now when it comes to MJ-12. Maybe I'll make a video on that. But, yeah, Stanton Friedman, totally legit. Stephen Greenstreet. I don't know a ton about this dude. This dude loves memes, so if this gets anywhere, I have a feeling he's going to see this. If he does, your memes are excellent, sir. I hope you don't find this offensive. That I find it, you're like a Twitter troll doing a lot of really interesting videos on UFOlogy, but you also like to poke the flames a bit. And I find that a little sus, but in a good way. You're not sus like these guys are sus. You're sus because it's just like, do you take it seriously or do you not? Or can you do both? Is that even possible? To not and? Whatever. Dude knows why he's sus. I'm not going to spend all day on it. Stephen Greenstreet. He's even got a meme, now that I think about it, that involves John Greenwald Jr. and the X-Files. It's really good. This guy's name? This is Timothy Good. I don't know a ton about this guy other than he spent his entire life writing books about UFOs. I've seen a few documentaries that include him in it. He may very well be here, and I just don't know enough about him to put him there, but from everything I've seen, he just writes a lot of books on UFOs. I think some of the stuff is pretty out there, but I don't think he presents it in a misleading way. So Timothy Good, British UFO researcher, honest intentions, good dude overall, I think. Mr. Tommy DeLong. Oh boy, what a shit show this is. This is going to be a hot take. Maybe not. See, I could put him here. I should put him here. But I think Mr. DeLong is a very interesting case study. He's either what they call I don't think he's a useful idiot. That's what the term is, but he's not an idiot. He's like he might be getting played by the government to release some ridiculous sounding stuff to add a sort of an element of ridiculousness back to the subject, but I'm not sure about that. If you don't know who Tom DeLong is, he was the bass player, I believe. He was in Blink-182. Maybe he played guitar. It's not like there's much of a difference in that band. But he used all of his music money to start To the Stars Academy, and him and his company have been largely responsible for some of the more interesting developments, specifically relating to government releases in the last 3 to 4 years. I heard an interview with Travis Barker, who was the drummer in his band, talking about how Tom was into this shit from day one. The first thing he bought with his record deal money was a computer to take on the road and read about UFOs with. Like, dude is very sincerely passionate and seems to have a very honest and legitimate interest in the subject and furthering it for the public. He used his money to start a company that does literally that, but he's gone off the deep end sometimes in terms of what he believes is real or what he reports on through his Twitter. Like, one of my favorites, he has a video that's obvious CGI of like a black triangle flying over downtown New York that opens up like a wormhole bubble and disappears into itself, and he's like, it's a real video, is the tweet. And like, it just seems like he struggles sometimes to separate fantasy from reality, but he's in a position of pretty great power and responsibility. And so I think he's honest in his approach and his intentions, but that he's either misled by some people or unintentionally misled and partied a lot or parties a lot, and therefore sometimes thinks shit is real that is not. But seems like a good dude. I've got no beef with Tom DeLong. Last but not least, Mr. Travis Walden. If you don't know who he is the fire in the sky alien abductee from Arizona who claims he's probably the most or the second most famous alien abductee other than Betty and Barney Hill. He claimed that while they were out in the forest, or his story is that they were out in the forest. I think they were log work. What's log? What's the word? I'm blanking on what it's called. You cut down trees with chainsaws. So him and four of his buddies were on their way back after a shift, and they see a UFO in the forest. He gets out of the car, appears to get abducted by the craft. The rest of them drive off. He's missing for 3 days. Then comes back saying that he was on a spaceship and doesn't realize it's been 3 days. There's a whole big story about it, but in modern times, one of the people that were part of the original five has kind of distanced himself, saying it wasn't true. It turns out that him and his whole family were very much into UFOs before this whole thing happens, and that they also entered a contest by the National Enquirer for the best UFO story that they won. I think everyone involved got $2,500 checks for it back in the 70s, which was a decent chunk of coin. And it's since come out that from people that lived in that area with him and who knew him at the time that he's kind of been a lifelong huckster scammer. So it makes his whole story pretty impossible to believe. There's no evidence for it, and if you look into it, you'll probably come away with the same conclusion. And then oh hey, there's Steven Greer. Hello, doctor. But yeah, that's my tier list. I'm still new at this content thing. I talk a bit faster than I should at times, but hopefully this was kind of enjoyable. If you enjoyed this content or thought it was funny, plan on making more. It's kind of in a similar vein, UFO stuff. Some funny, some not, some serious, some not. But I just thought this tier list was too good of an idea to not do while it was on my mind. And that's that. Look forward to seeing you in the next one. If you enjoy this kind of stuff, I'm gonna do it. Like or subscribe or comment, whatever. If you don't like it, don't do that. And yeah, to everyone in this tier list, if you happen to see this, please know that I love everyone. I'm not out to really rag on anybody. This is mostly in jest. I hope everyone can see it in the light that I intend for it to be in. And yeah, that'll be that. What do I always say at the... Oh yeah, rock and roll will never die. Something, something. Yeah, cool.